What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to learn how to build out this e-commerce looking app today, where we have our photos up here, which is a carousel of the product we're looking at. We've got a nice description up here that has auto-sized itself, a price. We've got some related products. So we'll take a look at how to build out this compositional Amazon-style product page in your app using UIKit. So if that sounds good, if that interests you of the slightest amount, definitely make sure to smash that like button down below before we get started. Hit subscribe if you're into iOS and Swift and haven't done so already. That said, let's get into the video. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're gonna stick with the app template under iOS, and let's go ahead and give this project a name of Amazon Shopping. Make sure your language is set to Swift, your lifecycle is UIKit, and your interface is Storyboard. Go ahead and continue, save the project wherever you'd like. And first things first, we want to go ahead and close this right panel here in Xcode and expand our Xcode window. The next thing we want to do is, I've got quite a few images on the left-hand side of my screen here. We're going to drag them into our XE assets here. So the first four images that we've got here are some product images for a Alexa Echo. And then we have a couple related product images. So I'm going to go ahead and create 8 image sets here. The first one is going to be we can just call it photo 1. And we'll have 4 photos that's going to represent the particular photos for the product we're viewing. So we're going to have a carousel of those. So we'll just call them photos. And then we'll have related product photos as well. So we've got 4 of those. And before we drag them in, we've got down here 4 related products as well. So let's create related 1. We'll also create related 2. And we'll do that up until 3 and 4, and then we'll drag in those images. Bear with me. All right, related 4. And let's make sure we spell all these correctly. So we forgot an E here, looking good. All right, so now what we can do is let's go ahead and drag in those images one by one. So here is the first one. We'll go here, here's the second one. The order of these don't really matter at all. We just want to have some nice photos that we can show in our UI to make sure everything is working as expected. So related, you can go ahead and drag those in. And I actually literally grabbed these images from the Amazon website. So feel free to use whatever you want, or if you have images coming in from maybe an API, that's totally cool as well, so long as you have something to show. So here is image 4. Let's drag this bottom one down here, and we are in business. So now we're going to want to jump into our view controller and talk about how we want our UI to actually look. So we want to have a top carousel, which is horizontally sliding to show the various pictures of the product we're viewing, and then we want to have related product rows below that and below a description for that product as well. So the core UI component that we want to go ahead and use is going to be a table view, and we're going to want a few different table view custom cells, which we'll talk about one by one. But first things first, let's go ahead and create a pretty simple table view here so we can start to make sure that something starts to appear on our UI. So I'm going to go ahead and register a pretty vanilla table view cell. So we'll go with this one here. It'll be a UI table view cell.self with an ID of cell, just like that. We want to make sure we add this as a sub view, assign its delegate, as well as its data source to be able to pass in data. We want to go ahead and give our table a frame in view did layout subviews. We're going to say tables frame is going to be view.bounds. And let's also go ahead and give this view controller a title of perhaps a Alexa Echo dot. And we can go ahead and conform to both of those protocols here. So UI table view delegate, as well as the UI table view data source. Now this is going to require us to bring in the required functions. So we're just going to stub them out for the time being so it doesn't complain. but we'll need to go ahead and make these fuller functions and a little bit dynamic so we can actually see all of the various sections we're going to want. So here we're going to say go ahead and dequeue a reusable cell with a identifier of cell for index path, and we'll return cell here, just like that. And before I go ahead and give it a run in my simulator to make sure we're seeing a table view, we'll jump into the storyboard here. We'll select it. We'll come up to the toolbar and go to Editor, Embed in Navigation Controller. We're just doing this to get the navigation bar up here. I'll go ahead and open the Attributes Inspector and select the Prefers Large Titles. This is strictly for just a look and feel, since it's going to look a lot nicer, but go ahead and build and run your application into a simulator, and what we should see is a title at the top as well as the divider lines for our table view. So bear with my slow simulator here, and that's hopefully what we'll see, and then we'll start doing each section one at a time. All right, hopefully it's still loading and it's not done loading, because we should definitely see a title here. All right, there it is. Cool, looking good. So the first section we want in our table, like I said, and like you saw, is that horizontally scrollable one where we can page through the product images. So before we start adding that, we probably want to define the structure for our data and how we're going to model it to supply our table view with all that information about things like sections and things like things like rows. Don't mind my accidental application opens there, but we'll go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and create an enum here. So I'm going to go ahead and say an enum will be a section type. Now a section type, we're going to have multiple sections. We're going to have cases. So the first one is going to be product photos. And then we're going to want a section for probably something like product info. Then we're going to probably want another section for related products. So the first one here is product photos, pretty simple. This one is going to be, the description and maybe price of the products, some cells for that. And then we're going to want some related products. So now that we have this here, we want to have an array on our controller, which is going to represent the various sections. So this is going to be section type. So let's go ahead and pass in section type here, and this will just be instantiated as an empty array. Now before our table is configured, we're going to want to say, go ahead and configure your sections, just like that, which is going to be a function that'll populate that array of sections. All right, so we're in here, we're going to want to go ahead and say sections.append. First one that we want in here are product photos. Then we're going to go ahead and say sections.append. We're going to want some product information. And then last up, we're going to want the related products. So we'll go ahead and do that. And now for number of rows here, we'll just go ahead and do 1. But we do want to go ahead and supply number of sections. That's a fairly important function now. And we can go ahead and say sections.count. So now if you actually go ahead and run your app after saying the cells text label text equals perhaps hello world, what you'll notice is we should have 3 cells divided up into 3 sections. Now you can't really see the sections are separate, but we do have these 3 cells showing up, so we're looking good. Now this first section, we need a custom table view cell for it, and then we also want a way to represent a view model to pass into each of the images that we'll want to show. So before we talk about the view model, let's go ahead and start creating some of those cells. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new group here. We'll go ahead and call it cells, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new file in here. It's going to be a Cocoa Touch class, a subclass of a UI table view cell, and this is going to be called a photo carousel table view cell, and you'll see why momentarily. Now this table view cell, we're going to go ahead and delete all the stuff that it gives us. The first thing we want to do is override the initializer here. So let's go ahead and find the initializer that takes a style. So we can say super init, passing in style, and the reuse identifier. You'll also want to go ahead and bring in the required initializer as well as layout sub views. just like that. Now, if you think about a carousel, all it really is under the hood is a collection view. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to create a collection view. So we'll say collection view is going to be of type UI collection view, and then in a anonymous closure we'll go ahead and create it. So the first thing we'll want in here is a UI collection flow layout, just like that. We're going to want to say layout dot scroll direction is going to be horizontal. We're going to want to set some section insets, and these are going to be basically the side padding of the section. We're just going to zero out all of these. Now that we've got a layout here, we can go ahead and say create a actual collection view. This is going to be a UI collection view, and this gets created with a frame. We'll say 0 to start and a particular layout. And then we can go ahead and return that collection view. Now keep in mind that we're going to want to also register a custom collection view cell, but just for the sake of getting this up and running, we're just going to register a vanilla collection view cell just to get started here with a reuse identifier of cell. And now that we've got this here, we want to go ahead and add it as a sub view. So let's go ahead and put a mark for our initializer to organize our code. But in here we can say content view, add sub view for the collection view, assign the collection views delegate, and assign the collection views data source. Now we're going to want this class to conform to both of those protocols. So we're going to say UI collection view delegate, UI collection view data source. Now this is going to start yelling at us because we're going to want some required functions. So we can go ahead and hit the error and hit fix, and it'll bring them in for us. We'll go ahead and move them to the bottom of the file just to keep things organized. And number of items, we'll just hard code this to be maybe 4. And what we'll do here is we'll just go ahead and dequeue a collection view cell just like we would for any other implementation of a collection view. We want a call with a reuse identifier and a index path. I'm going to go ahead and say its background color will be red so we can actually see something, and we'll return a cell here. So the idea here is that this table view cell internally nests a collection view. Now this collection view has a horizontal scroll direction. We've set its section insets. Now I'm also going to go ahead and say that its minimum inter-item spacing is 0. And I'm also going to go ahead and say that the minimum line spacing is also 0. And now that we've done that, we've added it as a subview. We probably need to give it a frame. So its frame will be content view.bounds, which should take up the entirety of the cell. And that's looking pretty good. So now what we can actually do, and before we do, let's go ahead and create a identifier static property on this cell. We can actually register this cell in our view controller. So if we jump back here, we're going to go ahead to our table view here, and we're going to say table, go ahead and register this cell for its particular identifier. Now that's looking pretty good, but now how do we know in the cell for row function which cell to dequeue? And this is kind of where the magic happens of the section enum. So what we can actually do is we can say what type of section are we trying to get a particular cell for, because we have an array of sections and we can get the nth element out. And now what we can do on this guy is we can say go ahead and switch the section type. And we know we have 3 section types. So the first one is product photos. This will be that carousel. The next one is product info, which will be different. And the third one is going to be product or related products, I should say, which will also be different. So now that we know which section we're trying to target here, we can dequeue the relevant cell. So now here I can go ahead and say guard let cell is going to be the table view dequeue, once again, a reusable cell. The identifier is the photo carousel cell now for the same index path. And the important thing here, the reason we put it in a guard statement is because we need to cast it as the appropriate cell. And the reason we need to cast it is because we need to use a function on it that we will define momentarily. All right, looking pretty good. So now each of the collection view cells, let's go ahead and actually just say fatal error here. Each of the collection view cells that we want to show in our top section, it needs to have an image inside of it. Hence, we need to pass in an image to be shown. So what we can actually do is on product photos, we can actually say this takes in an array of UI image objects. Now, what we could do is create these when we append to our section. So here we're saying go ahead and configure, and we're going to say configure with images. And we're going to go ahead and pass in some images here. Now, what we can do is say UI image named, and we had brought in a couple images. So I'm going to say photo 1, and we'll just copy and paste it a total of 4 times, just like that. Now, the UI image constructor, I believe, returns optional. So it's saying cannot infer contextual based reference type. Basically, what it's yelling at us about here is the fact that we probably need to supply either UI image optional here, or a smarter way that we can handle this is we can simply say, go ahead and compact map this. So I can say dot compact map, we can say $0. What that'll do is that'll make sure that this image array doesn't have any optionals, so it'll validate that all these photos exist. So now that we've actually gone ahead and created our case to hold on to a images array as its associated value, we can actually get that array out when we switch. And now that we have actually the images in here in our carousel table view cell, we can actually pass those in via a function. So we can say func configure with images. Now this is once again going to be an array of UI image objects. Once we get those images, we're going to hold them in a global array, and then we're going to tell the collection view to reload itself. Now let's go ahead and create this array up here. This is global to this class. We'll say private var images is going to be an array of UI image objects. It'll be empty by default. Number of items in our collection view will basically be the number of images that we actually have passed in. Now back in our controller, we can go ahead and say cell.configure with images. So let's go ahead and give this a run, and let's see how far we have gotten, make sure nothing's crashing. And the next thing we'll do is create a actual collection view cell so it's looking good. So we actually do have our collection view showing up here. There are two problems. The first one is the sizing is completely incorrect. Not only should our table view cell, which is the black background you see here, be taller to accommodate the height, but the red collection view cells should also be much wider. So let's go ahead and fix that. So our table view has a function. This function is height for row at index path, and there's a estimated height also. You want the height, and this is pretty simple. What we want to do is we already know which section we're targeting a height for, so we can go ahead and once again switch on the section type, and we can say if it is a product photos section type, go ahead and return view.frame.size.width. Or otherwise, you can go ahead and return UI table view, and I believe it's called automatic dimension, and that's going to basically use auto layout. So what we're saying here is, and let's see why this is yelling at me. The reason it's yelling at me is because this switch needs to be exhaustive, so we can go ahead and bring in these other two cases as well, so it stops yelling, and we can move this guy over here, and we need to prefix it with the return keyword. So basically what we're saying here is if we go ahead and give it a run, is that any table view cell in the first section should have a height which matches the width, so we're going to get this square, basically the square size here. Now we can see our 4 cells here, but of course our sizing is completely wrong, and they're also laid out vertically, which is also not good. The reason we have that being an issue right now is because we never explicitly set a item size for our collection view on the layout here, but the item size needs to be relative. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to conform to another protocol called UI collection view delegate flow layout. And what we can go ahead and now do is say there's another function called size for item at index path, and we can go ahead and return a size for the particular item. And I'm going to go ahead and say this is content view.frame.size.width, so it'll take up the entire width, and the height will be the same, so it's once again a square. So if we go ahead and give this a run, you'll notice now that we actually have our cells that we can actually scroll horizontally. We can't scroll vertically inside of this actual red thing, but you can see the black behind it. We can definitely scroll horizontally. So now we actually want to create a custom collection view cell. Each collection view cell needs to hold a photo. So this is pretty simple. We're going to subclass a collection view cell. I'm just going to call it a photo collection view cell. And like I said, this will have a single image view in it. So we want to do a couple things in here. Most importantly, create a image view. So we'll create it with a anonymous closure. We'll say this is a image view like that. Let's make sure the autocomplete is going to help us out here. And to do that, we need to somewhat spell it correctly. So we'll fix that there. Go ahead and return. And we should also probably say the content mode is going to be scale aspect fill, so it fills the entire image view. I'm also going to go ahead and say clips to bounds, just like that. We want to go ahead and initialize this class, or override the initializer, I should say. We're going to go ahead and add the image view as a subview, bring in the required initializer. We also want to lay out the image view, so we'll override the layout function here, and we'll say our image view has a frame of content view.bounds. And similar to what we did for our table view cell, we're going to have a public function on here. It's going to be configure with a single image, because each of these collection view cells represents a single image, and we can say image view.image is going to be image. Now we want to go ahead and register this as a cell on our collection view, so I'm going to add a static identifier property here. And what we can do back in our collection view, or in our table view where we have the collection view, is register this type of cell for its type of identifier. And once we've done that, instead of dequeuing a generic collection view cell here, we can say guard let's go ahead and try to dequeue a particular cell with the identifier that we just created, and then try to go ahead and downcast it to a photo collection view cell. And instead of actually just setting the background color, now what we're going to do is we can say cell.configure with the image at the nth position. So we can say get the image from the images array. So if we go ahead and give this a run now, I expect to start seeing our images. All right, looking good. Look at that. We've got our first image. We can pan to our next image. Now, one thing I see that's a problem is I can kind of scroll this, which isn't the greatest thing. We probably want it to be paging. So I believe the collection view has a property that we can set for is paging enabled. And paging will basically snap each of the pages as we scroll from one to the other. So if I let this go here, it'll snap. And same here. So basically we've got this top section looking pretty good. So this is how you would see the images in the Amazon app. Now, one thing I see it's a problem here is the background color is black in this collection view. So we're going to go ahead and say set your background color to be a system background color. And we'll do the same thing for the cell as well. So I'll go ahead and say the content view has a background color of system background color. Go ahead and give that a run, and let's see how it's looking. All right, much better. So cool. So now that we've got this up here, we want to work on the next section, which should hold two cells, one for the description and one for the price. Now this is going to be very similar. So if we go back to our view controller, the first thing that we want to go ahead and do is add an associated value to our product info section. Now, instead of holding images, we want to hold view models. Now, each of these view models is going to be an object that will represent how to configure the view for this particular row. So I'm going to create it right up here. This is going to be a text. We can go ahead and call this a text cell view model. It's going to be fairly simple. It'll have some text in it, but it'll also have a font size. So I can go ahead and say this is a UI font. So instead of a font size, we'll just say UI font, just like that. So what now we can go ahead and do is say that each of these is going to take one of these, and we can configure them in our configure sections. So similar to what we did down below, or up above I should say, for images, here we'll go ahead and say this will take view models, which will be an array, and we want two view models here. The first one is going to be a description with a font, and the font in this case we're going to say system font of maybe size 18, and we want to go ahead and give this a description. So I'll just go ahead and just copy and paste. We'll say Echo Dot is a great home speaker device from Amazon to do stuff, and I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this so we get it to be a little longer. And now that we've got this here, what we can go ahead and do is basically create another one for the price. I'm just going to line break it a little bit so it's going to look a little cleaner. Just like that. And let's see. So we can grab this whole thing here. Let me actually move the system font parenthesis back one line so it's clean. We'll take this whole thing and copy and paste it. And this is now going to say price, and we'll go ahead and say it is, I believe, like $49.99, something like that. So we'll just make up a price here. I will go ahead and say that the size here is going to be maybe 22, and this one should be 18, not 198. And now that we have these here, once again, we can get the actual value out in the switch down here, and it's view models. Now, similar to what we've done up here, we want to go ahead and dequeue a particular cell, except this time we don't actually need a custom cell. We can get away with using the normal cells. So we can simply get rid of this guard let and the else block like so. But we do want to go ahead and dequeue a cell with a identifier that we have registered, which I believe we still have cell. If I come up here and take a look, we still have this one here, which is a generic UI table view cell. And now what we can go ahead and do is, with the particular view model that we have, this is an array, so we need to get the nth view model for the given row position. So we're going to say from the view models array, if I can get my autocomplete to cooperate, we're going to say give me the nth position, just like that. And we're going to say configure a cell with a view model. Now, of course, a standard UI table view cell doesn't have this functionality. So what we're going to do at the bottom here is we're going to add a extension. So we're going to extend a basic UI table view cell, and I'm going to go ahead and add that configure function here. It's going to be configure with a view model. So we'll go ahead and do that, and this is going to get configured with a text cell view model. Now what actually happens in here, we're going to say a couple of things. First and foremost, text label.text is going to be view model.text. Text label.number of lines will be 0, so it line wraps, and text label.font will be view model.font, since we've encapsulated that in our view model there. So if you go ahead and give this a run now, you should see that your errors have gone away, and we should also see that we see our information now. So there is our description, and right below it is our price. So one important thing you'll notice here is that the sizing actually adjusted with auto layout, and the reason it's done that is because a standard table view cell actually uses auto layout constraints, and we've also said the height for a row in the product info and related product section is going to use automatic dimensions. All right, cool. So we're almost there. The next thing that we want is related products, and we probably want a nice title for it, a nice section heading. So what we can actually do is on our enum up here, we're going to go ahead and add a title, which will be a computed property. We're going to switch on self here, and I'm going to go ahead and say if it is related products, we are going to return maybe related products. And if it's anything else, we can say defaults, not defer, we want defaults. We can go ahead and return nil. So now what we can actually go ahead and do is actually make this string optional, so we're allowed to return nil. There's another function for a table view that we can implement, and this is going to be title for header in section, I believe is what it's called. So title for header in section, and we can first get the section type out, which is what we've been doing, and off of that we can say section type dot title. So let's go ahead and do that. Section type dot title. This is going to be just section, not index path dot section. Go ahead and give that a run, and we should see a title at the bottom here for related products. So there it is, right at the bottom, right above hello world. And now we just want to do the last thing, which is create our related product custom cell as well as view models. So our view models, just like the case up above, we're going to create. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a related table view cell view model. And we can probably call this a related product table view cell view model. And instead of creating this right in here, I'm actually going to create this cell here. It's going to be a new cell, Cocoa Touch class, subclass of UI table view cell. All right, and it's going to be called, like I said, a related product table view cell, just like that. We can drop the suffix there. Go ahead and create it, and right in here, we're going to first delete all of this nonsense, but we're going to create that struct for the related view model. So if you think about a related product cell, what do we really want in here? Well, we want a image, which will be a UI image, and then we also want a title, which will be a string. Perhaps we also want a price. I'm not going to add a price today, but you probably might want one. So each of these cells will need to be configured with this type of view model. So I'm going to first and foremost say configure with the view model of this type, so looking pretty good. We're also going to want the standard stuff on here, which is the initializer that we need to override. So we'll go ahead and say super init with the style and reuse identifier. We're also going to want the required initializer, and we're going to want to layout sub views. So we'll go ahead and say layout sub views. Now to layout sub views, we should probably create those. And before I even do that, we'll go ahead and say that this has an identifier. Let's make sure we spelled that right. And let's go ahead and create the subviews. Now the two subviews that we want is a image view and a title label. So I'm going to go ahead and call this a product image view. So we'll say product image view. Let's go ahead and make this an image view just like that. We'll go ahead and create it once again in the anonymous closure pattern. Go ahead and return this here. And in here, once again, we are going to say the content mode is going to be scale aspect fill. And we'll also go ahead and say image view clips to bounds will be true. Now we also want a label, like I mentioned, so I'll go ahead and create that here as well. We'll say label. This is going to be a UI label. Go ahead and do that, and this is going to be a label inside of here. We'll go ahead and return it. Labels number of lines will be 0. Label, other than that, actually, you probably don't want anything different. Let's go ahead and add these to our content view. We'll go ahead and add the label as well as the image view. Bear with me, we're going to review all of this at the end. I know I'm going a little quickly here. So once we've added those, we're going to want to, let's see what's going on here. This should be product image view. We'll say product image view, just like that. Once we've done that, we're going to want to lay all this out as well as configure it. So let's configure it first since it's a little easier. We'll say label.text is going to be viewmodel.that, and then we'll say imageview.image will be, or I should say product image view.image is going to be viewmodel.image. So now that we've done this, let's go ahead and actually lay this out. So the first thing we want is to calculate a image size. We're going to say this will be a CG float, I should say, and this is going to be the height of the table view cell. So we'll just go ahead and say content view frame size height. Now we're going to go ahead and say that the product image views frame here is going to be a CG rect. X will be 0, maybe 5 we'll say rather. The Y will be 0, this will be image size, and this will be image size as well. Now on the right of it, we're going to have the labels. So we're going to say labels frame will be a CG rect, and this is pretty simple. It's going to be 10 plus the image size, maybe even 15. You can go ahead and say y is 0. Width will be content view width, subtracting 20, subtracting image size. This will go ahead and say frame.size.width, since we don't have the shorthand extension. And this is going to be image size as well, which is the same thing as the height of the content view here. So we should be in business. The absolute last thing we need to actually do is create the view models and configure back in our actual class here, our view controller. So if you go ahead and do Command B, hopefully things are looking good, with the only exception of this error here, because we need to pass in an array of view models, which is going to be an array. We'll leave it empty for a moment. And in our actual switch here, we want to dequeue the proper cell. So we'll go ahead and say this is once again going to have a array of view models. And instead of actually typing it out, we can probably copy and paste what we've got here. So I'm going to delete this cell at the bottom here now. We can copy and paste this. And we just want to make sure we're using the proper cell identifier, casting appropriately. And here we're going to configure with the nth view model just like that. And let's see what's going on now. Everything hopefully should be looking good. So we've got a related table view cell view model. Let's go ahead and fix that and make it the cell. It shouldn't be the view model. And I think we also need to register this cell up in the table view. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste these two lines here. And I'll go ahead and just change the cell identifier as well as the cell.self type. Now, I promise, absolute last thing, let's go ahead and add some view models here. So we'll go ahead and create this view model. The image is going to be a UI image named, and we have a couple of these that we brought in. So related 1 all the way through 4. Now I absolutely do not remember what these products were, so I'm gonna guess and make some names up. So we'll go ahead and say this is a Echo, I don't know, Essential, and let's go ahead and copy and paste this a total of 3 more times. There's an Echo Show, there's an Echo Original, and Echo Television, maybe. That's definitely not what it's called, but just for the sake of example today, let's go ahead and give this a run and let's see how we did. So I think we actually need to adjust the height of that table view cell too, but let's see what we're at. So at the bottom here, I see that we've got only one cell. So let's see what's going on, because we've got 4 view models in here. So we should be seeing 4 view models down here, but at least our cell is looking somewhat decent. So our number of rows it should not be hard-coded. So here I still have number of rows in section as hard-coded. What we should probably be doing is get the different section type, and then we're going to switch on section type here and figure out what we want. So in the product photos section, we know that we only have 1 row because we're going to have a collection view in it, so we can return 1. In our other ones, so in the product info, for example, we know that we have an array of view models. So instead of actually hard coding this, we could actually go ahead and do is return n number of view models. That's how many rows we're going to want. And same thing for the last one. So for related products, once again, we have this view models array. So we can go ahead and return viewmodels.count. And now it'll all be dynamic. The other thing we want to do, let's just go ahead and give it a run to make sure it's looking good. The other thing we'll want to go ahead and do is bump up the size of these related products down here because they're a little tiny. So they're all looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with them. But in our cell for row at index path, rather our height for row, I should say, for the related products, we can maybe go ahead and hard code this to be 150, which will be nice and tall, and it'll adjust our image and our label here. So we have these nice large images now. Maybe they're a little too large. We could probably bump up the font size of the title there for the product. So if we go back to related product, in the label here, we can go ahead and say its font is going to be system font, maybe size 25. Go ahead and give that a run, and let's see how we did. Alright, so we've got these related products out here looking pretty snazzy. We've got a description, a price, and in my opinion, the coolest part about this is this horizontal carousel. So that's basically, in a nutshell, how you build out these compositional layouts. So you can use a table view with these nested collection view styles that we went over today. You can also, some of you might be wondering, you could also use a collection view directly with a compositional layout. Now, both approaches are valid. Compositional layouts are just a little newer. I've got a separate video on that already up if you want to take a look at it. But this approach, in my experience, is a little more common in industry because of the nature of legacy applications. And it also allows you to build a little more modularly, whereas collection views can get a little large if you have all the layout stuff being done in one place. So, and once again, if you wanted to hook up the delegates here, you can do that in the table view delegate. You can do the did select row at index path, and when you tap on one of these, you can have something happen. We're not going to do that today, but that's all I've got for you guys today. So if you enjoyed the video and haven't done so already, definitely drop a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't done so already. Helps us grow together. And leave a comment if you have any feedback, any video suggestions, or just want to say hi. Always love hearing from you guys and making videos that you want to see. So thanks again. I'll see you in the next one.